5 minutes past 2 o'clock, you're listening to the 123 show with me, Noreen Mir, on this Thursday afternoon. And it's time for a bit of artsing around. Andrew Dembina joins us this afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing, Noreen? All right today?
Yes, I'm doing very well. I'm so relieved at work because I'm trying you from our studio phone, and sometimes we don't have much luck from it. Usually I have to use the good old WhatsApp. Sorry, I can't believe my luck. Yeah, excellent. Well, can you hear me nice and clearly?
Very clearly. It's good. It's good from your end, yeah, because it's a cloudy day, and sometimes if we do the WhatsApp and with various signals, it can be worse. I'm glad this is working out.
Exactly. No time delay or anything. Excellent. Well, what have you got for us this afternoon for Artsing Around?
Well, okay, there's a bit of international focus, a bit of Hong Kong and Greater China, then a bit of international again. A kind of international sandwich with Hong Kong and Greater China as the filling, if you like.
Excellent. Well, there's something for everyone, if you like.
Well, yeah. So starting off then with something which I guess actually there is both a European and a Hong Kong angle in this. Van Gogh, the no longer with us for several years, decades, many decades, the Dutch painter,
guy who cut off his own ear. Yep.
Yeah.
Familiar with his work?
The same one. Yeah. It's going to be the first time that Hong Kong and indeed Asia sees one of his paintings auctioned in our neck of the woods very, very soon.
Oh, really? So, auctioned here in Hong Kong?
2 days' time.
Wow,
it's going to be
2 days' time. You can be the owner of a Van Gogh original.
Well, you can be, but I'll get on to how much it's going to cost you in a mo. If you, it's a pretty penny, I'll say that. It's a still life painting of his gladioli flowers, which is going to be selling for over 10 million US dollars. The estimate for in Hong Kong dollars is between 70 to 100 mil. So that's going up to a maximum of nearly 13 million in estimate US dollars. So that is a lot of money for
I feel sorry for him. You know, he never got to see any of this money. You know, I bet you... anyway, I don't know what I'd bet you, but, it's just ironic, right? It's such a famous... Such famous artists, but they never see a dime of their...
I mean, he saw very little of it, truth be told, and he was a Dutch painter. A lot of the Spanish painters, like Picasso and other well-known John Miro, a lot of other very well-known kind of painters in the history of art, they all flocked to Paris in the early 20th century. And what was quite famous was that that they used to sometimes swap a painting, or as they got a little better known, maybe it would be a drawing, nothing as precious as an oil painting, for a meal in a restaurant. And some of the restaurant and cafe owners that were the favourite haunts of the artists in the Place de Montmartre on a hill in Paris, where a lot of studios were around there in those days, would become the holders of a great collection of some of the biggest names in modern art, while the artists themselves handed some of their artwork over for the cost of a meal and a couple of glasses of wine. It's funny to think of that.
Yeah.
But the particular painting in question, which is called Still Life, a vase with gladioli, which was painted in 1886, is going to go under the hammer in 2 days' time at Sotheby's auction house. Of course, there will be people ringing in or making their prices known from various other methods, probably a Sotheby's app or something, I would think, or a hotline that, in fact, probably straight to a private collector.
Aren't auctions kind of old school? You've got somebody there in the auction house sort of doing your work, doing your bidding, if you like.
I think so, especially for this kind of price, up to 100 million Hong Kong dollars. You'd want someone to take the time to call you and to maybe note the kind of bids that you want to make. So it probably will work more like that. But Van Gogh, though, he's best known for his sunflowers and the Starry Night paintings, where he did swirly white light patterns around the stars of a night sky, which were mostly painted. I mean, some were painted in Holland, where he came from, over different periods of time in his earlier life, but towards the end of his time, he did spend a lot of time in Provence, in the south of France, and other parts of France, including Paris, as I just mentioned.
He also had a few sort of famous self-portraits. Were those self-portraits the ones without the ears, with the bandage on it? I can't remember.
Well, he actually... I think he did once do a single painting of himself with a bandage, but they've been really memed up big time for, for internet funnies being passed around, where I think that one of them was actually genuine, but he did a lot of self-portraits when he was in his early days, and for most of his time, as you mentioned, he was not a well-off artist, and so one of the things about painting models is that you need to pay them. So often, not just for the budget cost, but also to get better and better with skill of painting and looking, artists would sit in front of a mirror and paint self-portraits. Rembrandt, another Dutch master, couple of hundred or so years before Van Gogh, was also a master of the self-portrait in a much more traditional and dark way. The Spanish painter Goya. There are many artists, even Picasso painted some in his early days, more self-portraits. He did a few as an old man as well, but he didn't do many in his later years. He was too busy. In fact, Picasso really, compared to Van Gogh, did come into some sort of recognition in his own lifetime, but it was a little too late to make loads of money from. So it was other collectors that made most of it. Do you remember there was one time I did one of these Artsing Around reports, and there was a Swiss watch company that actually designed a watch for him while he was still alive in the last 10 years of his life, and that went under the hammer. The one that was made for him. It wasn't a line. These days, it would be like a line of Picasso watches. Yeah, in today's world, it would be like, how can we cash in by having a kind of signed off okay from an artist to sell a range of their watches, but in this case it was made for him as a present from the Swiss watchmaker. Yeah, you remember that, went under the hammer. Yeah. So Van Gogh didn't get anything like that because he died at a relatively young age, so he didn't live to be old enough to really get into that side of the commercialization. But back to the flowers, they're gladioli, which are, if people know, they're those long-stemmed, small-flowered, not as large as lilies, say. And it's a picture of a bunch of red gladioli, because they come in lots of different colours that people can get them in. And his brother, in a letter in the late 1880s, mentioned this and other paintings where he was absorbed by just painting gladioli, one picture after another. He used to buy a bunch of fresh flowers, and there'd be different colours. And you can find in the Van Gogh Museum and at different places that have his work some other variations of the same flower, sometimes in different colours, though, rather than red, as this one is that's going to go under the hammer. And he's well known, of course, for the sunflowers. He did far fewer gladioli pictures, but that makes this rarer in a way because he did tens and tens of sunflowers. So this is considered to be a little less usual to come up, for auction. So,
I'm just trying to look at sort of the significance of the gladiolis and the meaning of it, but can't seem to find, why was he so obsessed with it? And he loved drawing flowers.
He did. I mean, the sunflowers were what he became best known for flower-wise. There's one particular painting that he did of gladioli where he put some of those long stems that are usually packed with flowers that come into bloom once a year in Europe. So he was obsessed, I think, by reflecting the seasons, because a lot of the paintings that he did in Holland, The Hague, where he spent several years living, was of crops turning different colours, like fields of wheat that went from being green shoots. The same field would be painted full of green shoots before the wheat dried, and then they became this kind of, wheat meal colour. Beige colour. That's what a lot of artists were doing in the early 20th century. Cézanne was another one who would go back to the same spot in southern France and paint the same mountain landscape that he was attracted to magnetically in Provence, and he would paint it season after season. Also, Monet. the Impressionist painter
Oh, yeah.
who lived in London for a while. Have you ever seen those paintings of the River Thames and the Houses of Parliament by Monet?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're done at different seasons. There's winter, there's summer, as well as times of day. This is something that artists try to capture, the passing of time and the effects of nature on landscapes. Yeah. So it was just something that he found a challenge and seasonal and a reflection of nature, and so Gladioli became one of them. So let's see what it fetches. It was also one of the paintings that he did of Gladioli previously was given to an artist friend from Britain who was called Horace Livens, and he wrote to him. He wrote a note with a painting that he gave, saying that he made a series of studies of simple flowers, and he thought that he was really becoming better and better at capturing and rendering the intense colour instead of having what Van Gogh called a grey harmony. I think he was really saying that he was... What's a grey
harmony?
Well, it's not explained, but I think that rather than make a what is expected harmony, like a beautiful vase of flowers, that he wanted to capture simply what they were and for the colour that they projected. Yeah, rather than make a pretty painting of of flowers that all harmonised beautifully together to make a lovely painting, he wanted to capture the real essence of the flowers. That's something that he said to another artist that was based in the UK. So let's see what happens with that one.
Yeah.
Moving on to something else. I mentioned in the previous weeks or several weeks ago that there were a couple of things happening in the art events in Hong Kong. Well, I want to broaden that by saying that the art fair season, which would normally be happening earlier in the year, but because of COVID it's been delayed, or many art fairs and events have been put on hold and coming out later, but they are happening. And I did mention, and those who are into visiting them themselves will already know, that there was the Affordable Art Fair in Hong Kong in August, followed by the Unscheduled event. It's called Unscheduled. I mean, it was booked and scheduled in fact, but it's called Unscheduled, and that's from the Hong Kong Galleries Association, and that was held in Central last month in September. And now there are different things continuing to happen, so fingers crossed this is going to keep on continuing. There are things happening in Greater China as well as in Hong Kong, but I'll start with Hong Kong though first, because tomorrow we have another event happening right here on our doorstep at the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Centre. It's called Fine Art Asia, and it's a cross section of modern and contemporary art by living artists, and also collectible works by those who are from, I guess, the last century or so. The last century is still considered modern art, and with capital letters, capital M for the modern, because it's from the 20th century. When we talk about modern art as a movement or as a type of art, it really is from the early 20th century until pretty much some people consider it
until
to come
20
right
years
up to
ago.
now. Well, pretty much, yeah. But some people still think that they're in
still
that age,
the
but
same
generally,
era.
yeah. But generally, the last 20 or 30 years would probably think.
I
of
would
being
say
more
sort of till the end of the 90s, but yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But there's going to be a lot of Asian artwork, so that's from people that are considered worthy artists from Japan, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia. So that will be really interesting to see some of the most prized works of art, in modern art in particular, with a little bit of contemporary, so from the last 30 years, at the Convention and Exhibition Centre. And that's, if you want to find out more, it's at, all one word, fineartasia.com for the details. And it's on from starting tomorrow, and it goes on till the 11th of this month. So it's going on till Monday. It will still be on Monday itself. So check out more on that at that website. But in mainland China, from Shenzhen to Shanghai and even in Beijing, the rest of this autumn is still buzzing, fingers crossed, that they will still go ahead if everything remains as it is right now with events, despite people not being able to see them from here in the mainland. There's a lot going on which will attract people by video link for those who are collectors, but also, aiming at the domestic art lover and collector in China. So there was another one which I should have mentioned, which was in Shenzhen, just ended a few days ago, which was the inaugural DNA Shenzhen Design and Art Fair, which closed on the 4th of October, which brought 34 art and design galleries. So it mixed up designer furniture, lighting, and different elements of designing, even with some drafts of planning, such things as urban planning and architecture. Some things were not for sale. It was showcasing the strength of design from mainland China in a setting which was mixed up with fine art in Shenzhen, which is pretty interesting. And the co-founder of that inaugural event, whose name is Kylie Ying, said that when asked how come it was held in Shenzhen rather than Shanghai or Beijing, where to be honest, that's where most of the fine art and design happenings are, rather than Shenzhen. She said, Shenzhen is intrinsically the kind of place where you find things that are very developed in all kinds of areas of society. So we wanted to have a fair that was going to tap into the power and culture of design. I guess if you think about it, I mean, I haven't been to Shenzhen for a while, but they were some pretty wacky, architectural designs that went up from about 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I'm not so entirely sure about the art scene, but I do know friends from the tech, sort of the tech industry, and they've been in a few sort of incubator programs in Shenzhen previously before coming to Hong Kong, and they said it's so fast. Things happen there, pitches happen within sort of 3 to 4 months, whereas in Hong Kong it can take up to a year before things finally happen. So I can imagine it's buzzing. In that aspect, and everything is sort of accelerated.
Yeah. That is amazing because it's funny when you think about Hong Kong compared to other parts of the world, like let's say Europe or UK, where I'm originally from. I always think about architecture and the reclamation of land, and the whole of the where the IFC is and all that lot. I was here and watching that going up at incredible speed, and thinking how fast that is compared to some other parts of the world. But then to hear Shenzhen is in yet another high-speed gear.
Totally. They've said just comparing sort of different sort of incubator programs and accelerator programs, it's faster there, and they get funding, and from prototype to final product.
Much
Don't get
faster. Slowed down by admin too much.
Unfortunately, I know we need to do better here, I guess.
Yeah, certain projects have taken a very long time here that we're still waiting for. But although M+ will be opening next month, so we'll be looking forward to seeing that, talking more about that then. But back to mainland China, the Beijing Contemporary Art Expo is also happening from the 13th of this month, so that's next week, next Wednesday, till the 17th of October. And Shanghai fairs have now recently expanded to 4. There were 3 that were earmarked, but just recently it's now going to be 4, with some of them being versions of international, like we have the Art Basel Hong Kong. Over there, they're going to have a merger between something that is a big noise in the world of design called Design Miami, which is going to be with a kind of a collaborative Shanghai design expo from in early November, 4th to 14th of November. And there's also a photographic fair, a lot of which will be fine art based. Some of it will be commercial photography based in Shanghai from the 3rd to 6th of November. It was originally meant to be happening in September. That's why there's 4 things happening now. And there also on the Bund in Shanghai, there's going to be Art 021, which is going to be collaborating with the West Bund Art and Design Fair, all happening between the 11th and the 4th of November. So a ton of stuff going on in art and design in mainland China. The the Art01 and West Bund Design Festival were always huge before COVID struck, and they've been kind of holding back until now. Of course, they won't have the international stand or visitors that would normally be held there, but they're still expecting to have 120 leading galleries and designer brands and artist institutions, some of them still coming from abroad, but hiring local workers and, having sent their things and their exhibits in good time to be seen by the mainland art and design interested visitor. So that's all rather buzzing, I would say, more so than here, but then it is across a much larger piece of land, isn't it, from Shenzhen up to Shanghai and then Beijing. So because Hong Kong travellers to the mainland still needs to go through 3 weeks of quarantine, it's unlikely that too many people will invest that time unless they're exhibiting, I would have thought, to go over there.
Yeah.
So, however, some of those lucky people from the mainland who are able, although I suppose the 2,000 a day depends on whether, what your reasons are for visiting. I'm not sure of the small print in that, but it was mentioned in an article that I read that, as quarantine has been lifted for arrivals from the mainland to Hong Kong, that some visitors are expected to attend some of the art shows that are happening here, like I mentioned at the start of this segment. The Fine Art Asia that's beginning tomorrow.
That's beginning tomorrow and ending on the 11th. Well, it sounds like there is something for everyone. I'd be really keen to find out, perhaps, Andrew, you can give us a bit of an update next week or something like that, with how much the Van Gogh painting fetches.
Yeah, indeed. One last thing. Have I got time for one last mention? Very swift.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, right. So zipping off to the US now for an announcement that was made just a few days ago, which is that something that's happened in 2019 and 2020, but not this year, the Global Jazz Music Awards will be happening in 2022. They're making a big fanfare about it, but it's not, but the date and the venue has not yet been announced, but the people behind it wanted to say it's definitely going to happen because it's going to be the 100th anniversary of that thing called jazz music in 2022. So the Global Jazz Music Awards are said to be happening by its organisers, which will be at a venue and a date yet to be announced. So if you're interested in jazz, you might want to kind of, from beginning of next year anyway, or even if they have the confidence to announce it before then, to take note at who's going to be awarded. And the previous events of this have also attracted big, high-rolling celebs from the worlds of film and TV as well as music. There have been lots of big roster from Denzel Washington to Jack Nicholson and all these different big names that you'd expect to attend more like the Academy Awards in the case of some of them, but also pop music people, like P. Diddy and others from the various types of music that aren't necessarily jazz, Jay-Z and all sorts. So
Jay-Z and jazz. Wow.
Well, yeah. I suppose if you put J and his Z together, it spells jazz. So that would make sense why he'd turn up. He could wear his initials around his neck. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose
he's attended them before.
I suppose a lot of different genres will draw inspiration from this wonderful genre of its own, Jazz has its roots.
Especially as it has its roots in kind of
soul
and
then R&B,
and blues, definitely. And I think some of that plays into elements of hip hop a bit.
Yeah, wow, definitely something for everyone, from art, from paintings to art exhibitions to music. Andrew, thank you so much for your sharing for this week's Art Sing Around, and I look forward to more chats with you next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Noreen. Take care.
Yep, have a great Thursday and we'll have a lovely weekend, and we'll stay tuned to your program on Saturday. Thank you so much, Andrew Dembina, for this week's Art Sing Around. And I'll be off tomorrow. Sadia Osmani will be sitting in for me tomorrow. Thank you very much.